and aggregative democracy, which is voting, referendums, and informational campaigns. Why this is important? Because this principle I mentioned, I will not go further to the populism, but maybe we will mention it during the discussion. As I said, give the citizens redacted information, and like they banalized information about some public issue, and then there is a polarization to be pro or contra. This is the same model that could be used actually through aggregative models of democracy, which is voting. So we vote pro or against some candidates. We have referendums. If we don't have informational campaign, then it's easy to manipulate with the voters, and informational campaigns that doesn't give the possibility to people to discuss. So this model is actually based on idea that the political decision making must be endogenous process, and the political preferences and opinions must be formed within discussion and dialogue with others, whoever those others would be. If we have local problems and we have people who want parking, we must first discuss together and see and understand each other. And this is the basic model coming from the theoretical model of deliberative democracy. Then let me just see how to go. Okay. So why deliberative model as a solution, deliberative many publics as solutions? I already said that these are citizen forums in which the sample of citizens selecting from a population affected by some public issue deliberate on this specific issue. And I already also mentioned that they design, setting, and purpose can vary, but there are some basic characteristics. They are structured actually following the rules that should ensure the achievement of the ideals of deliberative democracy. And those basic values of deliberations are inclusiveness of all citizens or all preferences that exist in the public sphere, that they must be through this dialogue or opinion formation that is happened during the deliberation. They must be exposed to different opinions and information, because what research tell us now, and especially related to the populism, is that the people usually around themselves with those who think in the same. I don't know why this is moving. I'm not doing it. We surround ourselves with the people who think in the same way. So we are not exposed or challenged. Our opinions are not challenged. Our preferences are not challenged. So we don't understand this other side. And public sphere, more and more, also in stable democracies, you can imagine what is happening in hybrid regimes like Serbia, or authoritarian regimes like China, where people are exposed only to one kind of information or one kind of argumentation, so they can't really think about the problems from different perspectives. And then they decide without having complete picture of a problem, decide being convinced that this is the solution, the only one that is promoted through informational sphere. So in this, following the values of deliberation, those people must be exposed to different opinion information. Within the process of deliberative discussion, then what we observed during the research of deliberative many publics, there are reasoned opinion expression, people are given arguments to justify their statements, attitudes, preference. Of course, this is ideal. This can vary from one deliberative public to another, and it depends on the composition of the groups, of the issue. You can imagine that if we discuss about parking, it's going to be not that polarized, maybe, as if we discussed about some identity issues, which are where people have strong opinions. So we must take into consideration that. But what is our goal through these deliberative many publics is to provide a space where people can reason together with others and give the explanation to their arguments, not just to say, I don't want that, but I don't want that because these are my needs, this is the needs of my family, of my identity group. So let's try to explain to each other how we can understand each other better. In the end, of course, as in other political processes, the ideal we should reach is to make a collective decision or inform preferences based on common good. And this process of deliberation that should ensure arriving to the common good. So now, I will not go deep into the theory, but I will just want to mention that deliberative theory went through some different phases, and the most recent one is the systemic approach to deliberative democracy that frames these ideals as three key functions of deliberative democracy. This is epistemic, ethical, and democratic function of deliberative democracy. The epistemic function is to form preferences, opinions, and decisions that are based on weighting of all relevant information argumentation. And this is what we ensure through the process. This function, of course, relies on deliberative and ideal of inclusiveness or equality of participation, which guarantee the inclusion of all discourses and exposure to different opinions information. And it also relies on communication of justified arguments. This is this reason-giving element of deliberative approach. Given actually what I said already, that in heterogeneous environment, an argument has to be justified in terms of common good in order to be accepted and considered for the deliberation. So we cannot just say, this is only because I want something, but this is because there are some reasons that are valid to the others also. The ethical function is concerned with mutual respect between citizens, and of course, the deliberative theories there is no agreement on definition of the mutual respect. What does it mean in empirical terms? But it's clear that it's strongly related to the previous functions, since this fulfillment of the epistemic functions allow actually for the development of mutual respect. And the democratic function of the deliberative system finally is related to the deliberative requirement of equality of participation, and it's connected to the other two functions. So it's not separate. All these functions are correlates with one another. So let me go to the, and what actually deliberative mini publics do, or citizen assemblies, which is the most common model used now, and very promoted actually by international organizations and national governments in this moment. And that we, through procedure or phases of the process, guarantee this quality of deliberation following the ideas and values of deliberative theory. We need to define my main goal for at the beginning is to define the sample in order to achieve inclusiveness. And there is a almost consensus about the decision that the best way to choose the sample is to choose the representative sample of the population. But as we will discuss later, this could also create some problems. And I think the main point is that we must discuss the sample each time we pose some question about some public issue or some public problem. The other phase of procedure of deliberative mini public is to draft balanced informative materials. So it's like give them, this is we call it informational inputs, where citizens actually, before coming to discuss together in small groups, they must be informed about different aspects of the issue. So this is something which is very actually complicated, where when in the public sphere you don't have all the information, and usually preparation of these informative materials or informative sessions, some forms of deliberative mini publics can have first informative sessions and then discussion, but usually is based on this balanced informative materials that are drafted by the experts, different experts, and the hypothesis of deliberative theory is actually that experts are not neutral, and then we must collect all the different arguments and informations that experts can provide us, and then to give this informational inputs to the citizens. And then the people come to one place, we distribute them to the small group discussions, and then they have 2 or 3, 4 times they discuss within small groups, but in the meanwhile, they have a possibility to pose the questions to a balanced panel of experts and politicians. Those are usually people that already participated in drafting of the briefing materials. So what is happening? People are discussing, have this informational input, and then they try to formulate political decisions, realize that, of course, they maybe now they need much more information that they were provided with briefing materials, and then they go to the panels with expert politicians who can lead them actually through the process and say, okay, this is a competence of another authority, for example, or this is something that could be challenged by this and that argument. They get back to the small groups, and then with all these inputs, decide of the decision. Ideal is that this decision is consensual, of course, but we can sometimes, in order to arrive to decision, we can use also voting if we have more at the end of the event, if we have more policy proposals that are different. I just wanted to mention, because this is something people usually are confused about when they're asking, but what if they are institutions or they experiments, and it's not clear. Actually, deliberative mini-publics with citizen juries can have, they can be institutionalized at different levels of political making, and they can have different political power. Very rarely, they are used as informative process in order to form the opinions about some complex issues, often related, for example, to the climate change, where there are many complicating things to understand for ordinary citizens. So this can be, if we imagine deliberative process that is held before the issue is already framed in the public sphere, in order to not to allow to be polarized, we can implement deliberative mini-public as informative process when there is this lack of information. But usually they are implemented by the public authorities as consultational bodies. They can formulate policy proposals. They can be used, those policy proposals can be used as recommendation for policy makers, but in some cases they can also be binding. This depend on the institutional design where they are inserted into. For example, what I did research for a long time in Tuscany, where they have implemented that law in 2013 as experimental law, promoting deliberative mini-publics. And at the beginning, they didn't provide this deliberative mini-publics with the binding powers for the decision makers, but later, in later phases, they defined those processes as a binding. In the case when political decision makers cannot, they decide not to accept, they must give publicly the arguments which are usually related to the impossibility or to finance the project, or to there are some technical issues that need to be solved. So it can be implemented in different level of institutionalization. For example, in Serbia, we implemented this first time, citizen assemblies in 2 cities, and then later in 5 other occasions. We implemented it experimentally, which doesn't mean that we didn't expect those processes to have effects on the public sphere, which I will later discuss. But this was at the beginning, like EU, that at the European Commission experimented with those citizen assemblies, and later to gain the information about the process, about the challenges, and then later to decide which model could be best adapted to the needs of this constitutional design. And now challenges, it's not finished because it's from different papers I'm writing. I wanted to go back to the, for example, hybrid regimes and this experience we have. for example, in our case, politicians didn't show up at the plenary sessions, even though they were invited and the project was promoted by the EU. Only one representative of politicians showed up, and he didn't at all listen to what citizens proposed and what they discussed. They use it as like electoral campaign. He just say what he was usually saying on the television and what he's usually saying when somebody interviews. So there was complete lack of interest of politicians. It's on the other hand, it's not only lack of interest. What we show, what we see, and what we're following now in different experiments we are trying to implement in the form of citizen assemblies is that, for example, also experts are very reluctant to understand that citizens can actually contribute. They're accepting, they are interested. It's like somehow sounds interesting to them to be that or that panel to see what citizens can do. But at the beginning of the process, they're very close. They're usually coming with this attitude, I know better. And there is nothing new you can tell me about this. But what is optimistic is that at the end of the process, they start, when we have these briefing sessions, they start to understand that it's really something going on there, that the citizens have valid opinions. And now we have, like, for example, 3 experts on the same topic out of 6 that are keen to participate in other processes. They're starting to, so it's very, very important to take in consideration timing and understanding that not one in political cultures that lack debate as a component, which is always the case in hybrid and authoritarian regimes, or regimes like Serbia that were used to unique party, and the political pluralism was actually never substantially introduced. In those political contexts, it's very difficult also for experts who are not politically oriented to understand what is the value of citizen input and exchanging of opinions. So this would be something I would like to explore more and to underline how we must contextualize those deliberative, because we are usually saying, those who are promoting deliberative and public is saying, okay, this is the model, we will implement it and we will get the results. No, it's not the case. In some political context, we must take care about these contextual variables, which are not same as those in stable democracies, the countries with a stable democratic culture. What we did, for example, and this is when I'm saying involvement of other social political actors, in the second deliberative mini publics we organize, when we see what is happening with politicians and lack of interest, in order to not disappointment citizens, because citizens, of course, in the end were saying like, yeah, but they're not listening to us at all. So we try to experiment with by involving other social political actors, like social movements and civic initiatives. And this was something which actually contributed in a good way to our design, because people were there. Then they find some actors to talk to, and they were like continuing to have contacts with this social movement and local civil initiatives who are interested in the topics we discuss. So that was a good thing, and there was also spillover effects, although our institutions, given the fact that hybrid regimes didn't show the interest and they don't want to involve citizens, actually, there is a lack of political will. Those civic organizations, civil society and social movement actually started to promote deliberative mini publics. And from like we did 2 years ago first citizen assemblies, and now there is 4 civil society organizations. They're organizing deliberative mini publics on different topics. So it's kind of, we managed to have this spillover effects, to have effect on the public sphere, but not on the politicians, which is something we need to take care about. The other thing is what research showed us is that polarizing, and I have this experience in Italy with this high-speed construction of the high-speed train, when we implement deliberative mini-public in the moment with this public issue about the construction of high-speed train was already framed in public sphere, and there was a strong polarization of the citizens and the political elites and complete lack of information. So what we realized that people didn't change preferences in the end of the process. They were still voting for the same, even though the process lasted for 2 days. And we have random sample of people, all the arguments, information presented, and then they would still vote for the same option. But what happened is that they understood, we measured this through some tolerance index, they understood that the people on the other side are also, that they don't have bad intentions, they are not their enemies, and they understood the arguments that stands behind their attitudes, which is also very relevant, but show us that if we have highly polarized issue, we must have maybe continuity of these deliberative mini-publics, or deliberative mini-publics should be implemented before the strong polarization already happened. So we must experiment with this. We cannot leave the model as it is. We must take care about the context. Another thing, and this is, I will end very soon. Another thing that we realize in our research is that, I already said this about political culture, but democratization of overall system of decision-making is something that is very relevant. And this is strongly related, for example, let's strongly revise the issues that are decided at supranational level of decision-making. There are many parallel with, as EU experimented with citizen assemblies and deliberative mini-publics, in parallel, also many other international organizations like World Bank and United Nations, they also experimented with deliberative mini-publics. But since they didn't have the defined place within the institutional design, we don't even have trace of the processes. The decision made by citizens involved were never took in consideration. It was just like some kind of interesting event in the end. So there were no institutional learning, those processes were not connected, and because there is no political authority, actually the main political authority within the international system of decision-making, and there was no defined place of these experiments within an institutional design. I think I will stop here. Probably I expect many, I can continue, but I think there will be some, or I hope there will be some questions. So thank you.